Hello, everyone. We're sorry about the delay. We were just finalizing some technical aspects. Welcome to our webinar. Uh, I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy during these unprecedented times. Today's topic is going to be how you can use NCache as an AppFabric alternative. With me today to discuss this, I have our solutions architect, Ron Hussein. And today's webinar is going to cover a myriad of topics, particularly an overview of AppFabric and its end-of-life issues, as well as to why NCache is your best alternative to AppFabric, and any advanced distributed caching features that we offer, which you can use in place of what AppFabric used to offer, and a hands-on example and demonstration of how you can migrate from AppFabric to NCache. Now, please note that this is a live webinar, so at any time you can use the questions tab to insert any questions or queries or concerns you may have, and we'll be able to address you. And finally, at the end of the webinar, we will also have a separate Q&A session, so if anyone has any questions that they want to save to the end, we can get to you on those as well. All right, without further ado, Ron, you have the floor.
Very good. Thank you, Zaire. Hi, everybody. My name is Ron, and I'll be presenting today's webinar, and I'll cover all the technical details that Zaire has just mentioned so far. So today's topic is a very specific one. It's going to cover AppFabric end of life issues. And since Microsoft itself has recommended that you should migrate off of this technology, so if you're using an AppFabric application, if it's still part of your application architecture, we would present some options with NCache to migrate off of that. And I'll show you how smooth that transition can be, how easy it is to migrate off of AppFabric and be able to use NCache as is, and then be able to use some extended features of NCache, which AppFabric completely lacks. So AppFabric is a very limited product. It used to work very well, but it's end of life, right? So it's not being backed up, it's not being updated anymore. So it's high time that you migrate off of it. So today we'll cover all the details. What are different options in regards to using NCache as an alternative product for AppFabric, and how easy it is to migrate off of it, and what are the benefits that you're going to get if you start using NCache. So we have some tech details to cover. Please confirm if you can see my screen, if you can hear us fine. You can use question and answer tab in GoToMeeting, and that would serve as a confirmation that everything looks good. So please confirm if everything looks good. Very good. I think we've got a few confirmations, right?
So far, looking good, yes.
Very good. All right, so let's quickly get started. As I mentioned, it's going to be a hands-on webinar, so I'm going to cover some sample applications as part of this. So let's talk about AppFabric in general. I'm pretty sure most of you already know AppFabric and its architecture, if it's being used in your environment, so you should have hands-on experience with AppFabric. It's an in-memory .NET distributed caching system. It's primarily used as a free distributed cache, which comes as part of Windows Server. It's mostly used for web applications, middle-tier services, and any other .NET applications that need caching to save trips to the database. It was released and supported by Microsoft in 2010. 1.0 was released, and 1.1 was released in 2015, and that was the last version of AppFabric. The caching API, how you can use AppFabric, it's primarily going to be .NET application consuming AppFabric data class and exposing the wrapper, exposing the APIs of AppFabric through that library. You can also use some providers which AppFabric used to have, ASP.NET Session State Provider and ASP.NET Output Caching Provider. So these were no code change options which you could use if you don't want to use data caching. If you're more focused on web-specific caching, these were two features which were available without any code changes. Here's the architectural breakdown. It's very simple that you have your cache servers, which are termed as cache hosts in regards to AppFabric. It allows you to formulate a cache cluster with some limitations. There was a concept of majority rule. You need to have at least 3 servers, and if any one server goes down, you violate the majority rule, so high availability and data reliability can be compromised. And then there was a concept of lead host as well. But idea here is that you have cache servers which are hosting your cache. They formulate repository for caching, and then your application is able to connect to this cache repository backed up by multiple servers and allows you to perform caching operations. It used to have PowerShell based cache administration tools. Cache configuration and cluster configuration was usually on a storage location, a file system, or a database. So that was another dependency within AppFabric. So that's an overview of how cache-enabled application servers or cache clients can connect to this cache server. Uh, who's going to actually host the cache in your environment. Uh, AppFabric is end of life already. The first announcement came in April of 2016, where Microsoft started recommending that you should migrate off of this technology because it's not going to be supported anymore. They announced end of life support life cycle for that product, for this product in April 2016, and then they ended mainstream support within 1 year. So 2017 was the end of their mainstream support as far as AppFabric's official support from Microsoft is concerned. And then they extended support. They've been extending support for a few years now, but the current last date is going to be 2022. So basically that's the and we expect that this could be the last extension that Microsoft has given. So they're highly recommending that you migrate off of this technology. It's not open source, so it does not have any community to back it up as well. uh, Online resources, as far as even when I was preparing this webinar, getting an AppFabric help documentation out of Microsoft portal is very difficult as you start using it. So it's very difficult to get help resources. Official support is not there anymore. Limited extended support is available. No more bug fixes are going to be provided. No more enhancements are going to be added to the feature set. If you're using newer platforms such as .NET Core, uh, platform compatibility, security updates are not going to be part of this. So it's essentially end of life. It's an obsolete shelf product. Uh, and this is why Microsoft recommends that you migrate off of it and use alternatives. And that's why we're doing this webinar as well, so that you have an easy migration option as part of NCache as your replacement option. It's very risky to use AppFabric, primarily because Microsoft, the main vendor, has given recommendations to migrate off of it. Production deployments are at risk as we speak because of no support, no bug fixes, no enhancements, no compatibility or security updates. You're leaving the cost of something going down is very high because you may be using it in a mission critical application. And if that application is using AppFabric and if that goes through an issue or it goes down, you don't know where to go. So it can impact your business, and that can impact the overall user experience as well. So we recommend that you perform the migration, specifically when you have such easy migration options available, which NCache offers. So we highly recommend that you complete this project on priority. And as a matter of fact, in this webinar, towards the end of this webinar, you would be fully equipped to use an existing AppFabric application. And I'll show you step-by-step guide to migrate off of that, from migrate AppFabric to NCache. That application can be completely stop using AppFabric and start using NCache, and then I'll show you how simple it is. It's a 3-step process which I will cover within this webinar, and that should give you a very good idea how to start using NCache as an alternative. Any questions so far? So this was just some introductory detail, some details about how AppFabric came into existence, what are the issues, and how to actually migrate off of it. Any questions so far? Are we good? Was there?
So far, looking good. But if anyone has questions, I can give it a couple seconds and let you type in.
Sure. Very good. So NCache is a migration option. It's a very natural choice. NCache is 100% native .NET product, which is in the market for over 15 years now, with a complete market track record, with lots of traction, lots of actual custom deployments using NCache in their applications. And we have customers all over the place in different industries as well. So first benefit that you get in regards to migrating AppFabric to NCache is that you get Windows platform. So AppFabric is a Windows-based product. NCache is also a native Windows-based product. So we have a .NET-based caching server, so you can deploy it natively on Windows. If you're using AppFabric, you may be using 2012 or 2016 boxes. So you can use same set of operating systems and still be able to install NCache on the same boxes. So there's not any specific hardware requirement or operating system requirements that you have to match in order to migrate off of another technology. So that's very compatible with what you're already having in your environment. It's the oldest, most stable .NET distributed cache. We're market leader in this space. We have huge customer base who are using NCache in their .NET application. Since AppFabric is also based on .NET API, so it makes a very natural choice where you start using NCache API or use our wrapper approach, which is a no code change option, and migrate off of AppFabric and start using NCache. It's fully supported, right? So that's the main point that we raised in previous slides, that AppFabric is end of life. It's not being backed up by any community. It's not open source. There is no official support. The extended support is available, but that would eventually be discontinued. So you're at risk. With NCache, you get fully supported software from server as well as from client standpoint. If you see any performance issues, any security issues, any bugs, any new features are needed, you can just get in touch with us and then we'll work with you. It's much more powerful and feature rich as well. So I've just listed some of the most common, factors here that you should consider NCache as an alternative, primarily because of .NET and Windows support. Secondly, it has a track record within industry on within the .NET applications and is fully supported. Official, regular, and 24/7 supporting options are available from our teams. And we'll talk about what are the different features which you can extend. So you can extend your existing caching use case. We see customers coming to us and they have a use case for AppFabric, but when they adopt NCache, they want to extend their use case and start using those advanced features which are only available in NCache, and AppFabric completely lacks those features. So that's another factor that you should consider NCache as a migration option. NCache deployment in a typically large enterprise. This is how NCache looks like. You have again a set of servers hosting the cache cluster, and unlike AppFabric, you don't have to have a majority rule or lead host concept. It's 100% peer-to-peer architectured cache cluster. It uses TCP/IP based clustering protocol. You create a cache cluster on team of servers, and these contribute towards request handling capacity from the client applications which are connected to it. So these could be your ASP.NET or ASP.NET Core Web Apps. It's on newer stack as well. .NET or .NET Core Web Services, or .NET and .NET Core Server applications. So in general, any .NET, .NET Core, or even Java applications can connect to NCache and take advantage of NCache caching. It's very simple. You can start off with 2 NCache servers to formulate a cache cluster, and 2 is the minimum to get high availability and data reliability features. Even single server can work, but I would highly recommend that you use at least 2 NCache servers to take advantage of high availability and data reliability. And it's very flexible. It allows you to create as many caches as you need to. The size can grow, the memory, and then there are a lot of features that you get as part of adoption of NCache. Right. Any questions on the deployment architecture? We cover this section in in a very detailed manner in our regular NCache architecture webinar. But this is more of an introductory slide here. So please let me know if there are any specific questions in regards to NCache deployment. NCache can be deployed on separate dedicated servers where your applications are on separate boxes and NCache is on separate boxes, or you can have NCache and applications on the same boxes as well. So Windows Server box hosting NCache can also act as your client box, a web server box. It's just that your application is deployed on the same machine where NCache is also running. So that is also a possibility. Or you can have separate tier of caching servers and your applications can be on separate boxes. So we're very flexible. It's available in Microsoft Azure as well as AWS and in any public or private cloud. You just need .NET Framework as a prereq for NCache, and that's all it needs. Like I said, it's very flexible, very easy to use product. In comparison to AppFabric, it would be a natural transition from AppFabric to NCache if you plan to adopt it. All right, so next I'm going to talk about migration options, and I would show you hands-on examples to achieve this. So for data caching, although we discussed that we have .NET API and then we have sessions and output caching features with AppFabric. So this must be your overall use case with AppFabric. If you have a live application running at the moment, so chances are that data caching is the most common use case that you must have used in your applications while using AppFabric. So let's talk about how to migrate an application using AppFabric and start using NCache as a replacement. So there are two options. We've designed our wrapper, we've implemented it, and without any application code changes. You don't need to change any code. You can start using NCache as a replacement of AppFabric. You just need to use our NuGet and update the namespace. So what we've done is we've implemented our wrapper around AppFabric API. So in your application, whenever you make AppFabric API calls, behind the scenes, that wrapper implementation takes that call and starts calling NCache. And it's a very simple, easy to go option where your existing application, which I would show you how to actually manage. I'm going to run this side by side, and all your AppFabric APIs would start working with NCache seamlessly. No code changes are needed, just a library namespace change would get the job done. And the second option is making a direct NCache API call. In that you make code changes and you introduce NCache API calls yourself. You can start replacing AppFabric APIs, or you can start extending the existing AppFabric APIs and start using the extended features as well. You can use these two approaches side by side as well. For example, what you already have with AppFabric, you can use our wrapper to get that base covered, and then you can use our extended features which are missing in AppFabric. You can start using that through our native API as well. So I'm going to demonstrate these two aspects of NCache with the help of sample application. So this is our wrapper approach. Before we actually get started, let me set up the environment and show you how NCache gets configured and how easy it is to set up NCache cluster environment. So for that, I'm going to log on to our demo environment. This is our web management tool. This can be accessed from anywhere in your environment. It could be your client boxes, application boxes. It could be your current AppFabric server boxes. You just need to install NCache on one or two boxes. And then once NCache installation is done, you can start the web manager process and you can configure a cache cluster. So I have NCache installed on two boxes here, which I would use as my cache cluster servers. So all you need to do is come here on the clustered cache. You can, by the way, create a clustered cache, a local cache, a clustered cache, and you can also create, for some reason, let me just close this down and reopen it. Okay, let me access it. And you can access it from the IP address itself. So you click on new, and then you can name it, let's say demo cache. You can name anything. NCache is based on binary and JSON serialization, so you can choose either of these formats. I'm going to go with binary and choose next. With NCache, we have many caching topologies, and I would urge you to review our NCache architecture webinar, which covers all these topologies in great details. So partition of replica topology, if I have to give you a quick overview of this, it's based on partitions which are backed up. So this is our partition of replica topology. Each server has a partition of data where clients are connected. So server 1 and 2 host the active partitions. Item number 1, 2 are on server 1, and item number 3 and 4 on server 2. And then we have a backup partition as well, where server 1 has backup on 2 and server 2 has backup on server 1. So in case any server goes down, the backup gets activated and you don't lose any data. So each server is backed up on other servers in the cache cluster, and you can have as many servers as you need to in this setup. And similarly, we have other topologies which I recommend that you review through our architectural webinar. So partition of replica is what I'm going to choose. Keep everything simple. Mode of replication between active partition and its backup on the other server can be synchronized or asynchronous. I'm going to go with async because it's faster. Sync is more reliable, but async is pretty fast as well. And here I'm going to specify servers which are going to host my cache cluster. So I have two boxes, 107 and 108. Let's see if that cache TCP IP based parameters for communication between server nodes, and eviction can be turned on since you specified a cache size here. On this screen you also specify a size of the cache, so you can also choose eviction to be carried out if your cache becomes full. So in that case, cache can remove some older items and make room for the newer items. If you're using NCache for session caching as a migration from AppFabric to NCache, AppFabric Session Store module to a NCache Session Store module, we recommend that you turn off eviction because that's your user data. And even your sensitive data, even if you're using object caching APIs, you can turn on eviction only if you can afford to lose data if your cache becomes full. So you can always give a bigger cache size as well, by the way, in order to mitigate this problem. Start this cache on finish, auto start this cache on service startup. So each time server reboots, it should automatically rejoin the cache cluster, so there's no downtime or data loss. A cluster fully functions if it has all the members up and running. So on restarts, it should automatically rejoin. You should not do it manually. And that's it. That's how easy it is to configure our cache cluster. As you can see, we have 107 and 102 demo cache is fully up and running. And now I can show you some statistics. These are our Windows performance counters. So again, it's very natural choice where we have window integrated monitoring system through Windows performance monitors. And we have all our own monitoring tool available as well, which is making use of Windows performance counters as well as some monitoring parameters within the NCache application, such as number of client connections, some utilization, some stats within the cache host. So we have fully connected cluster, requests per second, average microsecond per cache to show you latency, additions, fetches, update, deletes per second, size of the cache, CPU graph, memory graph, total data in the cache count, CPU time spent by NCache, system memory right here, and then also the client processes which are connected. So it's very elaborate, and on top of it, it has client dashboard, report view of server and client, and then you can add your own dashboards as well. Let's say if I create a new dashboard, it should be named, let's say, API logs. I can just go ahead and create, and then I can drag and drop counters from here. For example, I can see cluster ops, I can see additions per second, so I can just add counters which I need specifically to monitor and cache cluster. So at the moment there is no client application running, so I'm going to quickly run one. And for that, I'm going to just say test dash stress demo cache. So as soon as this application runs, it takes some time for the first time. The PowerShell window on this box is slightly lagged, but as soon as this would run, there you go. It would simulate some dummy activity on my cache. There you go. And you can see requests per second coming in. Bring this here. Average microsecond per cache operation is little less than 100 microseconds per operation, and we have a pretty mix of additions per second, fetches, updates happening. Cache size is growing a few megabytes. It's only a 1 kilobyte object size on average. CPU is less than 5%, 4% at the moment. Memory is what you add, and you can see all set of counters are showing activity here. And we have a client processes being shown here as well. And if I show you the client dashboard, we're seeing all these reports as well. So this was just to give you an idea how easy it is to set up. So this is one of the tests. So if you already have AppFabric servers, all you need to do is download NCache software from our website, install it on same servers. 2 servers is the minimum requirement that we recommend for high availability and data reliability. You can start with 1 as well, just for testing, but we recommend that you use at least 2 servers in production. And once you've done that, you can then move to your application and start using the same cache cluster. And then after installation, obviously you need to create a cache cluster as well, which we've just done. And then you can start using your application and come to your application and start using NCache as a migration option, and which I would show you with the help of a sample application. So any questions so far? Please let me know if there are any questions in regards to what we've covered at this point. I think we're good.
Yeah, I think we're good. Please know that you can send questions anytime during the webinar, even in the middle of an explanation. So if anything pops up, let us know.
All right then. So I have this sample application. As a matter of fact, it's same sample application, one with native AppFabric console UI, and the second one which I've converted from this NCache AppFabric console UI. So if I open these two, these are exact same applications, but with small changes made in order to make it compatible with NCache. So, and I'll walk you through those changes. I have a separate copy of this, which I will demonstrate. So I've set this as a startup project, right? And I'm planning to run this. And by the way, before I run this, I have an AppFabric server up and running here as well. So we have AppFabric server. If I just show you the current stats, I have some, let me just restart this. And while this is being restarted, let me come back here. And this is using a typical AppFabric, data caching calls. Let me see if I show you from here, program.cs. Is there a question?
I wanted to throw one your way. Yes. One of our attendees mentioned back in slide 6 that it mentioned that the cache cluster is running on Windows and Linux. So can the server be hosted on Linux? And if so, then how does the dashboard feature work?
Very good question. This is a web-based management tool which is implemented in ASP.NET Core, right? And it has all the tooling available for Linux environment as well. So if your NCache server is hosted on Linux, first of all, you can still access the web management, which would be as part of Linux. You can access it from any Windows box or from any browser within your environment. And for Linux monitoring, we don't have perfmon counters in Linux yet, right? The .NET Core is still being evolved. So perfmon counters are not there as yet. So we've given our custom counters for Linux environment. So you would get almost similar view of Linux server monitoring out of NCache. So the only difference would be that it would be Linux box instead of Windows, and you can have a .NET Core installation on those Linux boxes. So the view would be same. It's just we've chosen a different route to overcome a limitation of .NET Core. Perfmon counters are not there, so we've implemented our custom monitoring for that particular use case. I hope that answers your question.
All right, so, sounds good.
Very good. Okay. Right. So let me just clear this and show you the current stack. So this is a demo cache, same name. You can even use the same named cache with NCache as well. You don't even have to change the name of the cache. That's how we've designed this. Right. So let me just show you statistics of this cache. So nothing at the moment is in the app in the AppFabric cache cluster. So I'm going to start this application. So my goal here is that we run an application with AppFabric, show you that it works, and then we migrate off of this, migrate this off to NCache and stop using AppFabric and start using NCache. So I'm going to run this. Right. So this is my personal test case, sample application that I've designed. It's going through all the APIs, possibly all the APIs of AppFabric. That's why you're seeing a lot of APIs being executed at this point. So I'll just run this with AppFabric and then run the same sample, which would have, and it would have notification tests as well, by the way. So while this is being done, let me just dock it here and then bring this one right here. Actually, let me just open this sample right here. So basically, same sample application. My bad. All right. So this is with AppFabric, and let me show you this sample has done some additions. So if I show you the statistics, we have item count to be 48, region count 60, request count 154. So we have a bunch of parameters. And if I show you the keys in the cache, you can see some stats within the cache. So it has some items on the primary, on the and we only have one server at the moment, but we have regions added in the cache as well. So it's a fully working sample application. And now I'm going to run the same sample, and then I'll show you how we've done the changes as well, by the way. So I'm going to come to this sample, which is a copy of the first one, which we ran with AppFabric and made changes to equip it with NCache. Start new instance, and that should run here. So you can see same sample is being executed with NCache, and I'll show you all the changes in a bit. So the side-by-side comparison would really help you that what we're expecting from sample one from AppFabric and what we're getting from NCache is going to be exactly same, and we're not making any code changes in order to achieve this. I'll walk you through all the steps that we've done. So it's almost completed. So let me just come to the very top. It's still running, by the way. So you can see the the uh, the yellow marker is basically the task that we're doing, and if it's completed, it would show you in the green. And if you see an error from the server side, you would see the darker red, lighter red, and then darker red if it's on the parsing side, on the client end. So I've just given them a color coded view. So you can see all the outputs are exactly the same, including the uh, error codes and any exceptions that may have encountered. So starting from here, adding key value, adding a non-existing key, same output here. Let me just fix this. I think I have battery issues. All right. So add item to the test. That's also this same output. Get item. Success on this one as well. Error. So you can see side-by-side view, and this is exactly matching with NCache, right? So towards the end, I would just show you some events. So it's using regions as well, right? So region use case is right here, and you would see the same output out of NCache as well. So clearing region, adding region, remove region test is actually performing exactly the way it's supposed to be. So that's a quick demonstration that we were able to achieve this. Let me show you what are the steps which are involved. Now I'm going to close this down. And by the way, you have all the monitoring, which I should have shown, but let me just show you the steps that we performed. All we've done is we have a NuGet package added. And for that, actually, let me just go through this step by step. So what you really need to do is, this is your AppFabric console UI. So it's using AppFabric at the moment. So first thing that you need to do is add a NuGet package. So if you go to manage NuGet packages, so you can see some installed NuGet packages, or you can browse and see some, let's see, AppFabric NCache. If I click on this, install this. So that's our first step. So if I come back right here within the migration option with no code change option, first thing that you need to do is introduce our NuGet package, which is AppFabric.wrapper.ncache. And then the next step is that you replace Microsoft.applicationserver.caching namespace with a logisoft.ncache.data.caching. This is the wrapper assembly, and NCache would take charge of all the calls from that point onwards. Let me do this in front of you. So this is the sample, which is native AppFabric sample. We have the NuGet installed. It's still being done.
Good question to throw your way with this. Question was, getting items by tags are supported by the wrapper?
Yes, getting the AppFabric has regions, right? So if you're using regions within AppFabric, so we will be using tags and groups to support that. But if you want to use NCache tags, right? So you want to extend your caching use, and that's a topic within the webinar as well. In that case, you can use our APIs directly. So use the wrapper to support what you already have through regions. Tag is being used behind the scenes. And then if you want to use tags specifically offered by NCache API, so you can use it direct NCache APIs as well. So I hope that answered your question. So I'm going to go through this one by one, right? And simply use this slide right here. So we need to use a logisoft.ncache.data.caching, right? So that's the idea here. So I'm going to go through this, add in the cache. Doesn't have any reference of AppFabric, but this one has. So all you need to do is include this name space, logisoft.ncache.data.caching, and that's it. So NuGet package has added a bunch of resources right here, NCache data.caching, which is the wrapper, and then NCache regular assemblies. And all of this is what you need. The NuGet is adding NCache client resources into your application. And then you go one by one and then start replacing this. Let me just come back here and copy this so that wherever you find AppFabric reference, for example, here, replace it with NCache. And I'm doing this in front of you so that you see how easy it is. So we'll keep on going. It's a big project, but I hope to complete it within. Sorry, my bad. Using logisoft.ncache.data.caching. And let's repeat this. There was a typo, so I think I got rid of it as well. All right, so I'm going to move on to other tests. This is fine. Clear region is fine. Create region is fine. So all the region tests are not using any direct references, and then we have tags test. So I'll post this sample on GitHub as well. By the way, our NuGet is already live with the latest service pack information, but I'll post this one in the. So I hope I've completed all. Let me just rebuild this. If there are any errors, I'll just go and specifically tackle those. So in this, I think. All right, so let me just validate that I'm using the right wrapper out of it. All right, so once you've done this, let me, I think I missed a few, but once you've done this, you need to come back here and add your client-side connection settings. For example, in my case, it's this box right here, 101, which is my own box. And the config has to have the name of the cache. For example, we had demo cache. So I'm just going to show you local testing with my local cache, but you can always use remote cache as well. For example, for that I can use this cache right here. Let me add my box as a client, right? And then add this my box as a client node. For example, 101 is a client machine. All right, so I have all the settings now. So I can either use the client.ncconf, or I can just point towards 107 as a client box from here. Right, so this is one thing, and then app config needs to point towards the name of the cache. So I don't plan on changing anything here. Now let me run this sample with my actual cache. It built fine. After that, I would just run it. I'll just make it as a starter project as soon as it completes. Start a project, and then let's run it. So it's essentially a 3-step process. You can include our NuGet, replace your AppFabric library, application server.caching with alachisoft.ncache.data.caching, rebuild the application, make sure there are no errors, use our latest NuGet package, and update client.ncconf to point towards the server that you've just chosen. And in this case, we have a client.ncconf file which gets added, by the way, from the server. Now that you have a cluster configured, just point towards that server. And if I come back right here, we now have, let me just monitor this, and let me close the stresses tool down. Right, so we should have stats being shown from the application itself. Right, so in general, that's the life cycle of how to migrate off and use our wrapper approach. Since we have 10 more minutes, so let me just show you the direct API call usage as well. Now, the second approach, where there was a question as well, what happens if we use NCache tags or NCache features? So we have a lot of advanced features available. So you can make direct NCache API calls on top of your AppFabric application. So for that, I would recommend that you use our help documentation as a guide. And this is our direct API. So all you need to do is iCache cache manager.getCache and get the cache handle, and then start using NCache APIs. And for that, all you need to do is use our SDK, and we have a sample application which gives you ability to add all of this into any general purpose application that you have. So even application using a wrapper approach can extend that usage and start using NCache APIs at a later stage as well. So if I open the samples, and for that I would show you NCache samples. Basic operations is a very simple sample application which gets the job done. Any questions so far? Please let me know if there are any questions, any confusions.
Let's just give it a few more seconds in case anyone else wants to type something in. Okay. We also can do this any extra Q&A at the end of the session too, if you don't have any questions at the moment.
Yeah. We can always do that. Very good. So this basic operation sample is ready. It has very simple approach, basic operation. So all you need to do is add alachisoft.ncache.client library. So like I said, you can use this as a reference, and wherever you have AppFabric, for example, if I open the bulk get test, you can include this namespace here, right? And within that, within this, let me just actually take it in the form where we actually need it. So please bear with me. Let me find where should I add it, because because I don't want to change anything in the sample. Right, I think it's using AppFabric wrapper test on top of it, so I think I should stick to this basic operation sample. Right, so this is our iCache class, cache, and then you can use create new customer, which is your object, and then you can say add object to the cache, which is your implementation, custom implementation, but this is how you would use NCache APIs. You can construct a cache item and then you call cache.add, and this represents NCache APIs, a Lajisoft cache object. So it's a Lajisoft ncache.client.cache, iCache. So it returns a cache handle and allows you to use NCache APIs on top of it. So like I mentioned, that you can start off with migration through wrapper, and then you can use our extended APIs on top of it. And then there are a lot of documentation resources available where you can see how AppFabric APIs look and how NCache APIs. So if you want to really stop using AppFabric and start using NCache APIs, you can start from the very beginning and use this approach. Or you can use a side-by-side approach where you use the wrapper for easy migration and then extend on top of it by using NCache APIs. We already done this. So ASP.NET session caching, you just change the provider in such a way that you can provide web config changes to point towards NCache as a session storage, and output you can point towards NCache as an output caching provider. We have detailed help documents available on this front as well. For example, if you say NCache session caching, it will point towards our session store provider. And similarly, you can look for output caching as well. Right, so this is what you need to modify within the web config. Same goes for output caching, which is right here. So if I provider overview, this is what you need to add inside your application to replace AppFabric output caching with NCache output caching. And on the left side, you can see the list with NCache is huge. Multi-site sessions are supported. View state provider is supported, which is missing in AppFabric. Output caching with custom hooks is a unique feature to NCache. Similarly, we have SignalR backplane, ASP.NET Core response caching, ASP.NET Core SignalR backplane. So this list is something which is very extensive because we're actively updating our feature set in comparison to AppFabric. And then in general, NCache is 100% peer-to-peer architectured in comparison to AppFabric. Many caching topologies in comparison, which you can review. WAN replication is available. Multi-data center support is available out of NCache, where you have active-passive, active-active, or C+ active-active data centers available. And we have a huge set of customers, which we already discussed, to back it up as well, where NCache is actively being deployed in Windows and .NET environments. So I think that pretty much concludes today's session. Let me know if there are any questions. I think there were a few. Please let me know if there are any questions.
Sure. So also, if the questions tab is giving you any difficulties, feel free to submit those questions in the chat tab as well. I believe one or two of our attendees mentioned that the chat tab is not working, maybe. So I have one question up here, Ron, for you. Question is phrased: in our AppFabric cache client wrapper that we have, we provide all the cluster nodes, ports, timeout settings, etc. via APIs vs in the app.config. Now, by using the wrapper, can we provide the same via APIs vs config?
Yes, you can, because in general, we also have inline parameters, right? So the wrapper is designed in such a way that it allows you to connect to the cache with minimal code changes and config changes as well. So that is designed in such a way, right? So this is why I wanted to make it look like it's very easy option to migrate off. So we only shown you the config level changes. But if you're interested in providing anything inline, we have init params. So we have initialization params which allow you to provide the list of servers, server 1, server 2, server 3, ports. So all that client-side settings that you've seen as part of the client.ncconf, which let me just open right here. So these are config settings you can specify within the within the application code as well. So that is a possibility. Very good.
Do we
Anything?
have any other questions? Please feel free to resubmit them into the questions tab. We've got time. So I'm just going to wait for a little bit and for about another minute to see if any other questions come through. And all right, if there are no more questions, all right. I think, yeah, everyone's saying, wait, hold on. We've got, so one of our attendees is asking about some performance informations, such as bandwidth.
Very good. Okay, so that's my favorite topic, to be honest. So NCache is very scalable. It's equipped with uh, it has ability to equip your application to achieve 100% linear scalability, right? So you can have more and more servers added, and it would just increase the request handling capacity. So if you just want a general purpose idea, I highly recommend that you review our benchmark. Let me actually show you this. So we have our benchmarks published with our throughput operations per second. With just 5 NCache servers, we were able to achieve 2 million requests per second, right? So that's something that you can review, and you can see from here as well. We just used 5 NCache servers, and there's a video demonstration of this as well. So if you want to review this, there is a white paper, and then there's a video live demonstration of this test where we started off with 2 servers, and then we were able to achieve some throughput and request handling capacity, and then we were able to increase number of servers by putting more and more load. With just 5 node cluster, we were able to achieve 2 million operations per second. So as far as server resources are concerned, if your question is more focused on what bandwidth or server resources are required, these were AWS servers, pretty high-end servers, because we really wanted to demonstrate the capacity or the stretch that you can achieve with NCache. So we were able to stretch these servers to limits, and we were able to get the 2 million requests per second. But you can use a web server kind of configuration as well, with up to 8 cores, with 1 gigabit network interface card, with memory requirements as good as 16 gigs or more. So 8 gigs is fine as well, but 16 gigs is what we recommend, so that you have adequate memory to host your data. Please let me know if there are any other questions here.
Well, your favorite question came up again. Why is NCache a better solution than Redis?
Very good. So basically, if I have to give top 5 reasons, first of all, it's .NET versus non-native .NET. Redis is not very compatible with Windows. It has a ported version, uh, supported by Microsoft OpenTech, a third party. Redis Labs or Redis open source themselves recommend that you should not use Redis on Windows platform. So in comparison to AppFabric, NCache is a better fit, primarily because of being on the same stack as of AppFabric, and Redis is not. Redis in general is more of a Linux-based product, whereas NCache is Windows as well as Linux-based product. There are many high availability issues with Redis. Redis cluster is not 100% peer-to-peer architectured in comparison to NCache. NCache is a fully peer-to-peer architectured cache cluster where you can bring any server offline and would not impact your cache clients which are connected to it, and it would not give you any data loss as well. Then a lot of features are missing in Redis, such as client cache is not there. They've recently introduced it, but it's very basic. We have client cache since 2008, right? So it's a very old feature, which is very enhanced as part of NCache. Bridge, server-side code, SQL-like searching, read-through, write-through handlers, cache loader, all of these features are missing in Redis. And I would like you to quickly go through a comparison document, which is published on our comparison page. So you can see Azure Redis versus NCache, Redis versus NCache summary differences, slide deck, and then there are some general purpose information about NCache. So let me just show you this real quick, and let me know if there are any questions. So I'm registered on this, so let me just sign in.
Sure. A follow-up question on that is, question was on async replication Can they assume that async replication's behavior is safe? Is it a guaranteed
It is. It is.
performer?
It is. So it if it fails in between, which is a very rare scenario, you can lose that update, but it's pretty fast. We have a dedicated thread. Let me show you the diagram and then come back to the first question. So let's tackle this question first. So server one's active partition, as soon as your application adds something here, it returns. Ncache is responsible for updating it in the backup. And there you have async and sync options. So async, it's pretty fast. It's within sub-milliseconds. And I'll be very happy if you can reproduce a scenario where a call is being triggered on server one, and while it was replicating, this server goes down and you're not able to get the update. It's a very rare scenario within Ncache. Even our QA teams work really hard to reproduce this, and they're not able to do so. So with sub-milliseconds delay, the dedicated thread updates the backup. And while that server goes down, there is a slight possibility that you lose update, but like I said, it's a very rare scenario to reproduce. And we have sync option available as well to accommodate this situation. If you're very concerned that you need backups to be updated all the time, you can use sync updates where client updates the active and backup in one go. It's a transactional operation. If it fails in between, it would roll back the entire operation. So it's very safe if your question is focused towards that. So coming back to Redis, this is Azure Redis versus Ncache. So you can see feature level comparison, and you can see the list where Azure Redis have partial or limited support on all of these fronts. So high availability is partially supported. Cache topologies are limited. WAN replication is very limited. ASP.NET caching features, object caching features, synchronization features are completely missing in Redis. And if you're using Ncache for object caching, it makes a lot of sense to have these synchronization features available. SQLite searching is missing. Data grouping is missing. Server-side code is completely missing, and that's not even .NET because the Redis is not written in .NET. So and then the list goes on.
Can I toss another one?
Yes, absolutely.
Questions are coming now. So the question is, so I know Ncache is native to Windows, and compared to Linux, Redis is better. However, how does Ncache on Linux compare to Redis on Linux?
Same set of features, same support, supported through .NET Core is available on Linux. So Ncache it's not just Windows product in comparison to Redis, where Redis is mostly Linux oriented product. Ncache is Windows and Linux. So whatever feature set that you're seeing here is fully supported on Linux environment. All the .NET Core releases on Windows or Linux are at par with one another. We have our custom monitoring to accommodate the performance counter issue that Linux has. But other than that, all the feature set that you're seeing, this comparison is pretty much valid. Everything is valid for Linux environment as well. I'm more focused on Windows because Redis in general completely lacks Windows support. But as far as Ncache is concerned, our Windows offering and Linux offering is exactly the same. So all the features that we've discussed, debated, Ncache is a clear winner in Linux environment as well. And as a matter of fact, with newer deployments, with more customers adopting .NET Core within their applications, they prefer to use Ncache on Linux environments because it's more compatible and more easy to use from a licensing standpoint. From the open source standpoint, Linux is rather easier in comparison. So our Ncache servers sitting on Linux servers through .NET Core is a very common practice these days. Let me know if there are more questions.
You can keep the questions coming, or if you all want to. Oh, Docker support. Do we have Docker support?
Yes, we do, of course. How can we not have Docker support? With Ncache, if you go to our download page, you would find a section on Docker. We have .NET Core Docker images, which are available on Linux, and then we have .NET Framework, Windows, and then we have Docker files available for both as well. So for enterprise, professional, and open source, you can use our, by the way, we intentionally have kept .NET Core images only for Linux because that's the more common one. And as a matter of fact, you can use our Docker images in any Kubernetes platforms as well, such as OpenShift, such as Azure Kubernetes Service, Elastic Kubernetes Service offered by AWS, and Google Kubernetes Service as well. So it's very common. It's very popular in application deployments. So it's something which you can download directly from our website or go to the Docker Hub for that matter. Please confirm if that answers your question. Let me know if there are more questions.
Any others? Even if you can't get all your questions in now, which I'm sure we're getting plenty already, but you're always free to email support@alachisoft.com. If you have any technical queries or questions about features, email support@alachisoft. Our support team will answer all of your questions, any of your thoughts, use case questions, etc. And if you're interested in getting NCache started, well, we do have a 2-month free NCache Enterprise free trial available for you to download and then use in your environment. And if you'd like, you can contact us either at support@alachisoft or sales@alachisoft. We'll help you get them set up. And also let us know what use cases you're working on, what features you're interested in. We'll make sure that you get a satisfaction on a technical front. Absolutely. We also had a question come in. Can we get the presentation slides? Sure. Not only is this webinar recording going to go out, so definitely expect that in your email, but we can get the slides out as well to you specifically if you'd like, or if anyone else wants the slides, go ahead and request them now. I'll make sure that everyone gets the slides. If there are no more questions, then just keep in mind that you can reach out to us anytime. Download NCache Enterprise if you haven't already, and definitely play with it. If you want assistance in getting it set up in your environment, definitely reach out to us. But other than that, Ron, thank you very much for a great webinar, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of you in our next one.
Thank you, guys.
All of you stay safe out there, be well, and we can't wait to see you again.
Very good. Thank you, Zara. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you, everyone.